Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig back here on the Power Hour here on 97.3 ESPN FM. The 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. We got a busy hour coming up for you. Coming up in less than 20 minutes, Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press will get deeper into the conversation about the Eagles and NFL offseason. And then at 6:40 tonight, we will talk with Arda Ocal. He is in Boston for ESPN covering USA versus Canada tonight on ESPN, ABC, and, well, really wherever you want to watch the game. And I made the joke earlier today, and I can stick by that joke, that I feel pretty comfortable saying probably triple the number of people at minimum will be watching this USA versus Canada exhibition game than who will be watching Sixers Celtics tonight. And we'll get into all of that. But first, I wasn't here yesterday. I took a personal day, and it figures the Philadelphia Eagles decide to make their decision about their offensive coordinator on the most inconvenient day humanly possible for me. It's like, I'm sorry, Philadelphia Eagles. I can't work every single day of my life just for you guys. But they make Kevin Patullo the new offensive coordinator. And I got to tell you guys, if I'm going to be completely blunt, I don't think it really matters. Because I'm starting to wonder how much of the problems that happened during the 2023 season, we have spent so much time blaming Sirianni and blaming Hurts and blaming the change of the defensive coordinators. But how much of it was just there were some bad apples in the bunch, and you basically picked the wrong apples. You basically went out of your way to put the wrong people in charge or in the locker room. Now, look, I am not suggesting for 1 minute that was the only reason what happened. But when you win a championship, if you're smart and you're paying attention, what you're indirectly saying when you win a championship is, we had a plan, we followed through on the plan, and now it is on us to keep executing said plan. Dominique Foxworth this morning on ESPN's Get Up.
They keep it pretty simple, and they wait for you to adjust, and then they adjust to that. Losing Kellen Moore, I think, is a problem in some ways, but when you go back and look at their season, it wasn't like elite design that got them past. It was really good execution. And so as long as they can stay focused on executing well and understanding that teams are going to have to compromise themselves in order to slow down their rushing attack, and then you make them pay with those receivers you have on the outside and the tight end and the quarterback who played as well as anybody in the big game.
Execute the plan. It sounds a lot like the Bill Belichick do your job narrative, does it not? Doesn't a lot of this feel like if the Eagles just do their job and they keep growing and evolving and progressing, that everything is just going to be fine? I know it's not that simple. And there's a lot of conversation that goes into this offseason. But Kevin Patullo was probably the most logical person to be hired. Now, look, we talked about here on 97.3 ESPN, Mike Gill on the Sports Bash, myself here on Game Night. We have all talked about the different options that could have been considered out there. But I thought Dan Graziano did a great job explaining the why Kevin Patullo is the new offensive coordinator for Philadelphia. This is NFL insider Dan Graziano on ESPN's Get Up.
The idea of continuity is appealing, obviously. They just played in the Super Bowl, so you've kind of missed the meat of the coach hiring cycle, right? So if you wanted to go look externally for a candidate, not saying they did, but if you wanted to, like a lot of the guys have been snatched up, this is a coach in Kevin Patullo who's been with Nick Sirianni before. Right. They both got their start in Kansas City. They were together in Indianapolis, and he has been a guy that's done a lot of different things on the staff while he's been in Philadelphia for Sirianni. So Sirianni has trust in him. Jalen Hurts has a relationship with him and trust in him.
It makes a lot of sense. And I think the problem is because of how horrible the 2023 season ended, we are looking at something that makes sense, and we have tried to read too much into it. The reality is that hiring from within is not, in theory, a bad idea. Hiring someone who, frankly, already knows the offense. The players already know him. As Graziano said, Jalen Hurts trusts him. Sirianni trusts him. At the end of the day, how many times did we talk about Nick Sirianni and, Jalen Hurts in the last several months? Shouldn't that be what is most important in this conversation? And realistically, most of your free agents are on defense. They're not on offense at all. So I'm not aggressively worried about Patullo being the offense coordinator. Now, would he have been my choice? Probably not. I probably would have liked to have seen them go outside the organization again. But Graziano explained it right there. You missed the window. When you win a Super Bowl, the majority of the hiring field is no longer available. So as a result, you don't have a lot of other options. And the reality is, you already won a championship. You have a winning formula. If you just stick to the formula, what are we really worried about? Now look, I know that a lot of conversation until the moment that he is traded, until the moment that he is moved, until we get to the day when we actually have where Myles Garrett is going to be. We are going to keep having conversations about could he come to Philadelphia. And it's not just you, me, and the rest of the football world on television and radio and on streaming having that conversation. It's even Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown on the Kicking It with D podcast or YouTube show or whatever this is. Apparently this guy is some hip-hop rapper I've never heard of in my life. So either I'm getting old or the internet is getting so oversaturated nobody even knows what's out there anymore. But this is what A.J. Brown said when he was asked a very interesting question. And he names Myles Garrett.
Money don't matter. You could bring anybody on your
an
team.
unlimited salary cap is off.
Honestly, that's what it be feeling like over here. I'll say Myles Garrett. I'll say Myles Garrett.
Oh, my God.
Adding him with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with Josh Sweat or Milton.
There's a lot there from A.J. Brown. Even A.J. Brown is bringing up Myles Garrett, number one. That's how big this story is. And number two, he says, I don't know what's going on with Josh Sweat and Milton Williams. That's a nice little shot by the Eagles wide receiver at saying, hey, man, nobody telling me nothing. I'm just out here doing what I think I need to do. But then he also said earlier, they asked him, hey, the salary cap feels like it's turned off. And he says, well, that's how it feels like on an everyday basis with the Eagles. And I think that's part of the reason why this move has some leg to stand on, because Dan Graziano talked about the financial part of this Garrett situation. A lot of people keep bringing up the compensation in the trade. And frankly, I think that, beauty is in the eye of a beholder. It's the idea of, is everyone going to agree on what the value, the compensation value of Myles Garrett? But what about the value of him and his contract? Myles Garrett is not a cheap player to acquire. NFL insider Dan Graziano, go.
I think this would fit really well with what the Eagles do and how Howie Roseman operates, right? Paying a premium price for a premium player, right? As opposed to sort of overpaying, your own free agent, like pay more than you think the market is worth for Josh Sweat just to keep him, right? You overpay to get a guy that can make a difference. That's what they did with Saquon Barkley, and they've done it with others.
It does make sense that it could happen. Now, I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it should. I'm not even saying it could. But what I am saying is we need to start looking at the Myles Garrett stuff through the lens of why it could happen, not as much as, well, here are the reasons why it won't happen. Because where there's smoke, there's fire. And for Philadelphia, for all the conversation we had about offense last year, at the end of the day, the Philadelphia Eagles got to and won Super Bowl 59 because they had the number one defense in football, and they ran the ball until someone found a way to stop Saquon Barkley, and then they finally threw it. If you literally repeat that formula with some better players, with a couple upgrades here and there, you're telling me that you can't get right back to that championship game in the NFC and right back to next year's Super Bowl is in San Francisco? Of course you can. And that's what we're going to talk more about with Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press coming up next. Josh Hennig hanging out with you here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle. We'll get to Dan, EHC, and other texts a little bit later this hour at 609-403-0973. Plus, Arda Ocal, he is in Boston with all the ESPN crew covering USA versus Canada tonight. We'll get his perspective on the biggest hockey game that does not involve a Stanley Cup or an Olympic medal. 4.4 million average viewership on Saturday night. The game peaked at 5.2 million people watching. We very, very well may get a similar or a bigger number watching the game tonight. All that and more still to come with me, Josh Hennig, live in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios on 97.3 ESPN.
Wake up weekday mornings from 6 to 10 a.m. with Unsportsmanlike on 97.3 ESPN with Evan Cohen, Super Bowl champion Chris Canty, and Michelle Small.
Can't wake up without it.
Brought to you by the Gallery Bar Book and Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you get coverage options based on how much you want to pay for car insurance. And then you decide how to spend the rest of your money because you're in charge. And right now, you're going to pay for groceries. But you decide what groceries. Just keep in mind you're running out of dishwashing soap. But you decide if you're going to buy that soap. It's just those dishes won't clean themselves, will they? Remember, with Progressive's Name Your Price tool, we'll help you find coverage at a fair price. And then you're in charge. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
You still thinking job change in the new year?
Yeah, I need something that's in high demand and more stable in this economy.
IT?
Yeah, cybersecurity, maybe even AI.
That's what I did.
Really? How?
Went to My Computer Career. You don't need any prior experience, and you could start your new career in a matter of months. A lot of IT pros go to school there, too, to level up.
Sweet. Are classes online or on campus?
Both.
Wow, I'll check it out. Thanks.
Make this your year. Take the free career evaluation now at mycomputercareer.edu. Financial aid is available for qualified students.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
You've lost so much weight. How'd you do it?
I got medical treatment for weight loss through Zelty and lost 50 pounds. I struggled for the longest time, but Zelty makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelty providers can prescribe FDA-approved weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight, like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others.
I've heard those medications can help you lose weight, but aren't they expensive?
Zelty can help get the medication covered by insurance, so it's as little as $0 a month.
What if you don't have insurance?
No problem. Zelty may be able to help you get other GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% off the price of name brand medications.
I'm ready to start losing weight. How do I get started with Zelty?
Just text.
Text SKINNY to 200-300 to get started today with Zelty and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy and Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text SKINNY to 200-300. That's SKINNY to 200-300. SKINNY to 200-300.
ZipRecruiter is the place. ZipRecruiter is the place for talented teachers, savvy software developers, and master mixologists. ZipRecruiter is the place where you meet all these people and more. That's because ZipRecruiter is the place for job seekers who are looking for new opportunities. In fact, ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day, so you can find the right candidates right away. It's no wonder that ZipRecruiter is the place for skilled skydiving instructors, accomplished airbrush artists, and proficient pediatricians. But if you're not using ZipRecruiter to hire, you're missing out. ZipRecruiter is the place that's so confident it can make your hiring easier that it lets you try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. So if you want the right candidates for all your roles, ZipRecruiter is the place to go. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Never miss out on great candidates with ZipRecruiter.
This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. NBA, the Sixers back in action tonight, returning from the All-Star break and looking to snap a 5-game losing skid. They'll be home to face the Boston Celtics. Boston has won 7 of their last 8. Philadelphia will play their next 3 games at home. The Flyers return from the midseason break Saturday as they take on the Edmonton Oilers, facing Leon Draisaitl, who leads the NHL in goals with 40. Philadelphia entered the break losing 5 of 6. The league's 4 Nations Faceoff tournament concludes tonight in the championship game as the United States takes on Canada in Boston. NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles have named Kevin Patullo their new offensive coordinator. He replaces Kellen Moore, who left to be the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. And in Major League Baseball, the Phillies open up their Grapefruit League schedule on Saturday in Florida as they take on the Detroit Tigers. Progressive Insurance, bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated in the best hearing aids of 2024 by USA Today, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, just $189.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aids.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed.
Join over 500,000 happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN hearing.com.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. 2 weather nuisances heading into your Thursday evening. 1, a continuing chance of a snow shower, and 2, a brisk wind kicking up overnight. Low temperature is going to dip to 23, though wind chiller feels like temperature around 10. Sunny and breezy tomorrow, but a bit warmer. High jumps to 37. Into the last weekend of February, we'll see good sunshine Saturday, high 41, 47 Sunday. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
Kids, work, running errands, sitting in traffic. Life is busy. Shore Physicians Group wants you to take time for your health. Shore Physicians Group offers the highest level of quality, compassionate care close to home with convenient locations in Margate, Marmora, Mays Landing, Northfield, Ocean City, and Summers Point. Life is busy. Take time for your health. Visit shorephysiciansgroup.com and make your appointment today.
Shore Physicians Group. Be well connected.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
We'll check back at the text board a little bit later this hour. I see Dan from EHT and others at 609-403-0973. But right now, joining us as promised, Rob Maaddi covers the NFL for the Associated Press. He is back with us for another conversation here on 97.3 ESPN. As the NFL, listen, I feel like you could talk NFL pretty much every day, the way the news cycle goes with this league. And Rob Maaddi knows that all too well. Rob, how you doing today? It might help if I actually potted Rob into the board. There we go. All right. See, sometimes you don't hit the button, and you got to try again. You got to try again. Rob, I should have you now on the radio.
All right, buddy. I'm here. I feel like the season hasn't ended. I went right from the Super Bowl into not feeling good for a couple of days, recovered from that, and next thing you know, I'm getting ready to go to the Combine on Monday. So that's what happens when the NFL extends its season, and if they ever, if they actually expand to 18 games and go into President's Weekend, we'll literally have like 5 days between the Super Bowl and then the Combine.
That's wild.
I'm going to join the NFLPA in rooting against 18 games, but I just think that's a matter of time once they figure out the concessions that they're willing to make and what they're going to give the players and the players' union. So that's going to happen eventually, Josh. It's going to happen eventually. We're just going to have football 24/7, 365.
So let's get into some of the details because, I haven't had a chance to talk to you on the radio since the Eagles decided to stay in-house. And I was saying before you came on, Rob, that to me, there's a huge difference between what happened in 2023 and what's happening in 2025, which is when they promoted Brian Johnson versus when they promoted Kevin Patullo. It's the reality that they are learning from their mistakes, right? That the idea is that you won't fall into the same trap because the Eagles showed you last season that they learned from their mistakes and they moved on, and now they have a winning formula, and now it's almost like a, hey, don't mess it up kind of vibe more than a, hey, we got this great new coordinator.
Yeah, I think when we talked last week before the news came down, I was kind of leaning towards staying in-house and hiring or promoting Kevin Patullo because I wanted to see the continuity. They just are coming off an incredibly successful season, culminated with winning the Super Bowl. And although Jalen Hurts didn't have a elite numbers-wise type of season, he's the Super Bowl MVP, and he got the job done. And anytime they needed him to throw the ball, he did, and he did it well. And we all know how successful they were running the football. And Kevin Patullo has been there. He's familiar with the offense. He's worked with Nick Sirianni for several years now. They understand each other. Nick, I believe it was during the Super Bowl, at some point when he was speaking about Kevin and what he brings to the table, and he spoke always so highly of him, obviously. That's why he's on the staff, but said he doesn't make a decision without running it by him. And he's been involved in all facets of the offense. So I think it was just a natural move to make, especially, too, Josh, when you're this late, right, in the game. I mentioned at the top how we're a few days now away from the Combine, and a lot of coaches, obviously all the coaching, the cycle's complete. All the vacancies have been filled. And if you're going to start looking for an offensive coordinator, you would be looking for someone who didn't get another job somewhere else. So I think it made the most sense at this time. And they're set up nicely. I think that they're in a nice position right now to be able to build on the success they had. They don't have to come in and install a new offense or do anything different. Just build on the success that you had. Of course, other teams are going to they're going to try and counter what the Eagles did, and you're going to have to make adjustments, and other teams are going to learn from your tape and your film and all of that stuff. But I think it was the right move at this time, bringing in or promoting a guy who has been there, he's done that, he's had success, you've won with him, and we'll see how it pans out. Doesn't mean the Eagles are going to repeat next year. Doesn't mean they're going to repeat the success they had offensively. Things could turn in a hurry. You can lose one or two offensive linemen. Something could happen, God forbid, to Saquon, who in the past has had some injury-plagued seasons, but he was fortunate enough to be able to be healthy for this entire season. So, and of course, we're entering Howie season now with the offseason coming up, free agency, the draft, and we'll see how they supplement the roster and who they lose and who they keep.
Well, you mentioned Howie season, so that kind of leads me to my next question for you, Rob, which is, obviously, there's a lot of smoke right now, right, about this Myles Garrett stuff. And people, Rob, they keep bringing it up. Well, maybe the Eagles. And, to the point where you have people literally rationalizing, well, this is how it would work. And so I got to ask you, Rob, does it make sense for Howie and the Eagles to go pursue Myles Garrett?
Well, when you have a future Hall of Famer, I think it would make sense for 31 other teams to call the Cleveland Browns and say, what would it take? What are you looking for? How can we make something happen here? But you, of course, have to be able to fit it within the salary cap. And we know that the salary cap's going to be a little bit more than some initial projections, right? So, and Howie's a master at the salary cap and being able to work out the numbers and keep the guys and all of that stuff. I don't think it's reasonable from a standpoint of what it should take to get Myles Garrett. And what it should take to get Myles Garrett is a slew of draft picks. And the Eagles are a team that really values those picks. They're not going to throw 2 first-round picks into any draft for any player. I just don't see that happening. If it were a matter of making it work under the salary cap, all of that stuff I think is doable some way, somehow. But I can't imagine that the Browns are going to trade Myles Garrett for anything less than 2 first-round picks. And if you look back at some of the trades for some edges, whether it was Khalil Mack a few years back, it takes a lot to be able to bring in a guy of his caliber. So I don't see the fit from that standpoint, unless the only way it wouldn't take 2 first-round picks is if the Eagles were going to part with one of their 3 former first-rounders, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, but I don't see any reason to want to do that. Nolan Smith in a first for Myles Garrett, I don't know. You just want a Super Bowl with the guys you have. I don't know that you need to go out and get Myles Garrett. Now, I hear all the rumors that he could be heading to Washington, but I don't think Washington is a Myles Garrett away from being able to overtake the Eagles anyway.
Yeah, and what confuses me, Rob, is that, part of what's not being brought up is the reality, and you know this better than anybody, as someone who covers the league, Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Hey, Rob, it takes 2 to tango, and the last thing I saw was the Browns don't want to trade Myles Garrett, even though he wants to be traded. So there is some internal issues. This will have to be worked out there in Cleveland.
Yeah, and that's all stuff that needs to be resolved, obviously, before you they've got some issues. They got to deal with Deshaun Watson, his contract, which is a heavy burden, and he's not going to be ready to start the season. He had a setback. He retore the Achilles. He might not play at all this season, which isn't a terrible thing from the standpoint of productivity on the field, because he hasn't been what he was in Houston at all. So that's obviously been one of the worst trades in the history of the NFL. They got to resolve their quarterback situation,
right?
Figure that out. So I understand why Myles Garrett, he wants to be on a winner. He wants to be on a team that has a chance. It's funny how the last time they won a playoff game was with Baker Mayfield. They got rid of him. They make this trade, this crazy deal for Deshaun Watson. He's been an absolute bust. Baker goes through Carolina, L.A., and finds his way to Tampa and resurrects his career and is a franchise quarterback who's won 2 straight division titles. man, the Cleveland Browns. If you're a fan of the Browns, you can't be happy with anything that organization does. And trading Myles Garrett would just add to that. But if he wants to be traded and he's insisting upon it, there's nothing they can do to make that situation any better. If he doesn't want to play there and he wants to go, letting him sit out the entire season doesn't help the Browns for this year or for the long term. They're better off finding a trade partner, getting some assets for him, and moving forward. If they think they can win this year and they can convince Myles Garrett to stay, I'd be surprised. Obviously, this is going to be a big topic of conversation next week when the Cleveland brass is available at the Combine. So I think there's still a lot to be determined there. And if he indeed ends up on the trade market, there's got to be a ton of teams, man. There's got to be a ton of teams who are interested beyond Washington. I've said Tampa Bay should be. They need an edge rusher, and anybody really can use a premier elite former defensive player of the year and a guy who's right there in the mix every year for defensive player of the year.
Rob, one more on the Eagles specifically, and that is they obviously have way more guys than they're going to keep who are going to be free agents. They can't keep everyone. I've been kind of working under the assumption here that Josh Sweat is gone. I don't think you hired Drew Rosenhaus to get a hometown discount, right? And then Milton Williams feels like a 50-50 proposition because, if the right team comes along and throws, a lot of money at him, you could always – it's a deep defensive line draft, and we know the Eagles are good at drafting linemen. That's why, to me, Rob, I think that if they sign anyone this offseason, absolutely has to be Zach Baun, because the one position that they have had the most success with, they have gotten to 3 Super Bowls in the last 10 years, Rob, and it's been all when they've had high-level linebacker play.
Yeah, and I think he'll end up being that top priority. I agree with you on Josh Sweat coming off the Super Bowl that he had. Somebody's going to overpay for Josh, and he may live up to the contract that he gets, or he may not. But I think he's probably as good as gone, and the Eagles should be in position to be able to replace him. Maybe they bring, Bryce Huff signed last year, has got to step up and play a little bit better. Maybe Brandon Graham comes back on a 1-year deal. He was still playing well before he tore his triceps and then came back for the Super Bowl. But I think you could find a situational pass rusher. Zach Baun, his importance to this team was on full display, I think, in the Super Bowl, throughout the playoffs, the pick he made in that Super Bowl and Patrick Mahomes, what he was able to do for that defense, all pro, a guy who went from special teams to defensive player of the year finalist this year. I mean, those are – he's going to get paid, but I think he's a priority enough for the Eagles where how he can make it work some way, somehow. That's where he's a wizard. That's where his genius lies. It's not – before the draft, before the trades and ripping off other teams and other GMs, it starts with his area of expertise, and that's the salary cap. And that's how he really built his reputation on, was able to go from being an unpaid intern to landing a job because of what he learned and how he handles and manipulates and really is able to work that cap unlike anyone else in his position across the league. So if that means finding a way to pay Zach Baun and keep him on this team, I think he will. I think there's a little bit of a special kind of relationship, or just the fact that he was kind of his guy, right? He brings him in. Him and Vic Fangio have this feeling about him that they think that he could take that next step and become an every down player instead of being a special teams player. And when you develop someone like that, you don't want to develop him and let him go. So I think there's a little bit of a loyalty factor there too from the Eagles, where they, Howie joked around a lot about it at leading up to the Super Bowl that week, and just talking a little bit about Zach Baun. I think there was something he said, was it the Kelsey show, whatever show that Jason Kelsey's doing now? He's I can't keep up.
Oh, you mean the
Kelsey,
Late Night with Jason Kelsey show?
Yeah, that one where Howie was in the audience.
That one.
Yeah, right. So I think there's there's an affinity for Zach Baun. I think they'll make that happen.
Rob, before I let you go, I did want to hit on one other topic, which is going into this offseason. You know, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with different teams. We know that there are teams like the Raiders and the Giants and the Jets that need a quarterback. We know teams like the Bengals have to make difficult decisions this offseason with their finances and their players. Which of the teams out there that have a lot of questions hanging over them are you most intrigued by this offseason?
You know, the Rams situation with Matthew Stafford is very interesting to me because of the domino effect that it can have. He's 37. He's still playing at a high level, still wants to play, wants to be compensated for being a top-tier quarterback, yet he's due to make, I think it's $27 million this year, and it wouldn't a team trading for him, taking on his salary, certainly wouldn't cripple their salary cap situation at $27 million. It's not difficult on the Rams either, but he's going to want to go somewhere, renegotiate, and get more money in that 45-50 or beyond range of what guys are getting now, right? There's only, I believe, 6 quarterbacks in the NFL still active who are starters who won a Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Joe Flacco, if you consider him, because he did win a Super Bowl. He's not a starter anymore. And Matthew Stafford's one of those guys. So if they indeed trade him rather than keep him and extend him or give him more money for this season, this is a playoff team, and this is a team that can compete next year. Do they bring in Aaron Rodgers? Does Aaron Rodgers then, does he go to L.A.? Does he go to Pittsburgh? Does he go to – I can't see him going to the Raiders. They're just not ready to win yet. So I think what the Rams do with Matthew Stafford can have other ramifications as far as what happens with Aaron Rodgers, or what other quarterback ends up there, because I can't see them trading Stafford and then going young because they're a team that expects to win and compete for a championship in 2025. So that one to me is intriguing. And if you would have asked me this question a week ago, I probably wouldn't have thought about it that way until some of the news that came out this week surrounding the Rams and Matthew Stafford and the possibility of him being on a trade chip.
Yeah, and I guess those Sleep Number commercials don't pay enough money, so I feel like I see that commercial now all the time in the last few weeks. I mean, I'm constantly seeing him and his wife in the stupid bed together talking about, I like it cold. I like it colder. But when we both get me one, I'm happy. And I'm just like, shut up already. Like, my goodness.
I don't have a Sleep Number, but if they're willing to give me one for free, I'm more than happy to take it and talk about it as much as possible.
He's Rob Maaddi, at Rob Maaddi on the Twitter X platform. Of course, he is the AP senior NFL writer and reporter, and he joins us each week here on 97.3 ESPN. Rob, great stuff today. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Josh. Have a great week.
And, of course, Josh Hennig here live in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios of Atlantic City. Coming up next, we will preview USA versus Canada, and we'll check in on the text board, 609-403-0973 in your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
It's Sixers Celtics.
Tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the Sixers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
For 3 and it's in. A timely tray by Maxey.
It's Sixers Celtics. Tonight, coverage begins at 7 p.m. It's Sixers basketball all season long on South Jersey's radio home for Philadelphia 76ers basketball.
Hammers it in. Are you kidding me? He rocks the rim with a right-hand jam.
97.3 ESPN.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why, when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time on a fancy water bottle with ultra titanium alloy metal. You're not sure why you need all that. I mean, it just holds water. But you're getting it anyway. Because if you're hiking near an active volcano and you accidentally drop the bottle into molten lava, your water will still be icy cold. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For water bottles. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Taxes was taxing. Now taxes is relaxing when you file for free.
I can file for free? TurboTax Free Edition. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free. I can file for free.
Now this is taxes. File for free with TurboTax Free Edition and get your maximum refund. No schedules except for earned income tax credit, child tax credit, and student loan interest. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free.
Rise and shine, Valentine. All month long, you be the commander-in-chief. The savings are presidential. You just sign and drive at Matt Platt Mitsubishi with 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days, or 0% for 60 months on all remaining 24 Outlander sports in stock. But they won't last. Get yours before they're gone. Brand new Outlander PHEV, 0 security deposit, and just $399 per month lease. Yep, just sign and drive it home. Maybe you're a first-time buyer, or you've been turned down for a loan. Matt Platt Mitsubishi wants to finance your future, not your past. Bring in any trade, even if you're stuck in a current loan or lease. AJ the Trade Man wants to get you released and into a brand new 24 Outlander SUV, $29.99 with 0 down and 0 payments for 90 days.
Simply, Matt Platt Mitsubishi.
Rate qualifications exist with approved credit. 1666 per 1,000 finance on in-stock 2024 Outlander Sports. Not all will qualify. Go to mattplattmitsubishi.com for complete details or call 844-946-2315. Price includes all costs to be paid by consumer, except for licensing, registration, and taxes. Expires 3/4/25. Matt Platt Mitsubishi in the heart of Glassboro for 30 years.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. I know for some of you folks out there, the Sixers are back in action tonight, but let's be realistic. 3 times more people are going to be watching on ESPN tonight the final of the 4 Nations Faceoff. USA, Canada, second time around to talk more about it. He, of course, is SportsCenter host, ESPN NHL content host. Arda Ocal joins me here on 97.3 ESPN. Arda, welcome in. How you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing great. I'm sitting at TD Garden right now. Actually, I'm walking around section 17, and I'm just soaking it all in. The calm before the storm. The ice looks immaculate. 4 Nations Face-Off Championship is on the Jumbotron right now. Like, I and the hockey world are buzzing right now about what we're going to see tonight.
You know, I was listening to Emily Kaplan the other night on Amber and Ian, and she made a comment that, you know, for people who cover the sport, right, that this rivalry, this intensity was not a surprise to them. Can you elaborate that for our audience to explain why was it that the hockey world understood that this Canada-U.S. rivalry, even though it's an exhibition, would be so intense?
I think the word exhibition itself is misleading. Sure, they're playing in a tournament that's not for the Stanley Cup, but if you talk to these players, like I'll use Matthew Tkachuk as a perfect example. He just won the Stanley Cup last season in a Game 7 where his team almost got reverse swept. One of the most spectacular turn of events in a series ever, but they go on to win. They fend off the reverse sweep, and Matthew Tkachuk was celebrating with the Stanley Cup. But he said today that this game, Canada versus the United States, in this championship that many people labeled as an exhibition, is the most important game of his life. That the reason is that these players have really 2 dreams in hockey when they are trying to make it. The first one, of course, is winning the Stanley Cup, but equal to many players is the idea of playing for their country, because they grow up watching their favorite NHL players playing best on best competition, trying to win a gold medal or trying to win a trophy with their country's colors at the front of their sweater. That matters in many cases as much to them, and the intensity is absolutely there. The care, the passion, the drive, the desire, it matters. You can tell hearing these players talk how much it means to them and how amped up they get 4 games like this, this is a moment, this championship game. We're lucky to have it as USA and Canada, especially for North American hockey fans, but this will absolutely be a sports moment on the calendar.
You mentioned earlier about the level of competition, and I know that sometimes in the past there's always been concerns about, for example, Worlds is going on at times during the NHL playoffs, and some of the best players in the world are unavailable for those games. So in many ways, you could argue that we haven't seen this level of talent on the ice with the country sweaters since an Olympics, right?
And there was a time, of course, after the 2016 World Cup of Hockey where NHL players no longer participated at the Olympics in any sort of best-on-best competition. And that's one of the other things that really puts this over the top is hockey fans and even sports fans have been clamoring for this level of competition for such a long time. They've been waiting ever so patiently and not so patiently in many cases for the best to face the best. And that's what we have wanted all along. And now what we're going to get is we're going to enter a new golden era. Like we haven't seen players until this tournament like Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel and Austin Matthews represent their respective countries at the best on best level. But now what's going to happen is the Four Nations Faceoff is really, and it's become much more than an appetizer because this is a cultural moment, like I said. But this tournament was meant to be a bridge to next year's Olympics where the NHL players will be able to resume representing their countries at the Olympics. And then 2 years from that, they will reintroduce the World Cup of Hockey, which will be, as we understand it, an 8-team tournament, which will have a more formal structure than the Four Nations Faceoff that is happening now. But even though it's an appetizer, even though we may never see this type of tournament, like Four Nations Faceoff may never happen again because it'll be replaced by the World Cup, we're still getting the Canada-USA, the international matchups that we've always wanted, the best representing the best.
We're talking with Arda Ocal. Of course, you catch him on SportsCenter hosting as well as NHL content for ESPN and ESPN Plus. As the Four Nations final is tonight, of course, you can watch it on ESPN and ABC. It is USA-Canada's second time around. Arda, you mentioned about the talent. I got to ask you about one guy, Charlie McAvoy, not going to play tonight. What is the perspective on how that could impact this game?
Yeah, so Charlie McAvoy is out due to an injury and an infection to the injury. He's going to have to sit out, which is such a bummer for him because this game is being played in Boston at TD Garden. He plays for the Boston Bruins as well, so it would have been this double whammy reception kind of situation, sort of like, it would have been such a surreal moment for him to, this is his home arena, to be able to represent his country in his home arena. And so it's unfortunate for him that he has to sit out. And of course, what ends up happening now is if there are more people that sit out, the Team USA brought in players like Tage Thompson to come in reserve if necessary. If there's more injuries and they fall below the roster limit, then they can bring in and sub in the players. That's the rules of Four Nations Faceoff in particular. Now, remember the first time that Canada played USA on Saturday, Cale Makar, who is Canada's best defenseman, he was unable to play in the game. He is now available for Team Canada. So you have sort of a reverse situation where one of USA's best defensemen is not able to play in the game, where you now see Cale Makar come in for Team Canada. So dynamics-wise, like these two teams now have the benefit of having played each other once. It was a really it was a defensive masterclass. It was such a great, well-played game defensively. Both teams limited the other's chances. Canada had a lot of trouble getting to the front of the net to create some high-danger chances. They just were not able to find those quality opportunities, and it reflected in the scoreline. It was 2-1, and then USA scored an empty net goal. So if the quality of play, which you assume it will, because these are all elite superstar, often generational level talents, we're in for maybe the best. Like you could, when it's all said and done, Saturday was among the best hockey we've ever seen. That could certainly replicate itself in this championship tonight.
You mentioned the game on Saturday. Well, that game was in Montreal at the Bell Center. Tonight, you said you're in Boston for this game. How do you think that'll impact the game? Because obviously the first time around, USA is playing on foreign soil. Now they got the home crowd behind them.
Oh, yeah, no, they're going to get cheered. It's going to be great. Team USA is going to have definitely the hometown advantage. You know who I'm really curious about is Brad Marchand. So Brad Marchand is, Bruins legend at this point. When it's all said and done, his number is going to be retired in Boston. He's, in the folklore of Boston hockey, right? And he, in Montreal, which is one of Boston's traditional hockey rivals, gets cheered when he scores a goal. So it's like a surreal moment in itself that it's like Brad Marchand in Montreal getting cheered. Like, who saw that coming? Well, now the opposite's going to happen. When Brad Marchand steps onto the ice here for warm-ups or when he's introduced, I am very curious what the reception is going to be, because these fans, though they're Bruins fans and though he's their guy, he's wearing the wrong sweater tonight to them. So I wonder what will happen when he gets introduced, and I certainly wonder what happens if he scores a goal, because that's going to be such an existential crisis for the fans in attendance, unless they're already resigned to the fact that, no, we have to boo our guy tonight because he's wearing red and he's not wearing red, white, and blue.
Arda, before I let you go, I got to ask you, because always a topic when it comes to hockey, no matter if it's for us in our area, it's the Philadelphia Flyers or it's another team around the league, goaltending. It's always a conversation. You got two very different goaltenders, right? Hellebuyck, considered not the best, one of the best goaltenders on the planet, but he's Mr. Fundamentals, right? Binnington, we know that he's got the ceiling, right? He's got the ability to play at a high level because of his athleticism. What is your perspective on this goalie matchup the second time round?
Yeah, Connor Hellebuyck has been the best goalie as the siren goes off. I think they're testing something in TD Garden right now, if you can hear it. But basically, Connor Hellebuyck has been the best goaltender in the NHL this season. He is a lock to win the Vezina if things continue, which is the best goaltender in the NHL award on a yearly basis. And he is certainly on track to do that. He's been very good in this tournament. He hasn't been tested too often because USA has been solid defensively. Meanwhile, Jordan Binnington has had a couple of goals that he would have loved to have back, and he has also played in spectacular fashion. The big example is in overtime against Sweden. He literally saved the game for Canada on multiple occasions. Sweden could very well have scored in that game in overtime, but Jordan Binnington was the factor. So Jordan Binnington has experience in this building too. If you're looking for some lore, he showed up in Game 7. He won 3 games in the 2019 Stanley Cup Final for St. Louis to win the Stanley Cup. So he has a little bit of history in this building in must-win championship games. So I would say the goaltending matchup still favors the United States. Their trio are the strongest set of goaltenders they've ever had in the history of USA hockey. This roster, top to bottom, you could argue, is the most talented roster that USA has ever had, which only adds to the intrigue of this incredible rivalry and matchup that we're going to see.
And folks can see it tonight, of course. USA, Canada, round 2 for the final of the 4 Nations Faceoff. And, of course, a part of the coverage will be Arda Ocal, SportsCenter host and also host of NHL content across the ESPN platforms. Arda, enjoy the game. I know it's going to be absolutely intense in that building, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much for your time.
Great stuff there from Arda, and I did laugh a little bit when I heard the siren go off in the background. It's almost like you're sitting there so focused on the conversation that, oh yeah, they're testing the siren in the background. Like what's going on over here? Before we get out of here, as promised, I want to get to Dan and EHT at 609-403-0973. He wants to talk about the Sixers, which are probably the most miserable team in the city right now. He says the Sixers need to blow it up like we've never seen before. They need to do it like the Knicks did. Sign true leadership players like Brunson. James Dolan was always known as a bad owner. Now Harris is like him. Sixers need a culture change. Well, a couple things there. One, the Knicks accidentally got Brunson. Okay? The Knicks put his dad on their coaching staff, and they really took care of him in a lot of non-monetary ways. And so they were able to not just bring him in, but then later re-sign him to below market value deals. That was kind of a perfect storm. I don't know if that kind of player currently exists for the Sixers to get. is number one. Number two, the Sixers need to blow it up, but the problem is it's too late to blow it up. You're too deep into the season to try to tank it now, because if you were going to tank it, you should have done it a month and a half ago. But they gave you too much hope. They gave you too much, well, we beat the Celtics on Christmas Day. Well, we won 5 games without Embiid and Paul George. This team gave you too many small moments that they made you think they still had a chance. And then for the second straight trade deadline, Daryl Morey basically does a lot of nothing. And the problem for the 76ers is you're supposed to be depending on this model. You're supposed to be leaning into the opportunity you have in front of you, and instead of building a team that everyone can get behind, they built a team that needs to be getting their AARP cards at this point, or put on injury reserve or something. It's an absolute disaster of a season. All right, thanks to Arda Ocal for joining the show. I can't wait to see USA versus Canada. I was captivated by the game on Saturday night. Great rematch tonight. Thanks again to Rob Maaddi, as always, for joining us to talk football. I'm Josh Hennig, live from the Ocean Casino Resort Studios of Atlantic City. Sixers basketball is next.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey Saturday afternoon on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Listen as Tim Saunders and Todd Fedork bring you all the exciting play-by-play action.
Flyers get the extra attacker on Konechny. He scores! Travis Konechny!
It's Flyers Oilers Saturday afternoon. Coverage begins at 1 p.m. It's Flyers hockey all season long on South Jersey's radio home for Philadelphia Flyers hockey, 97.3 ESPN.